Have you noticed how some men never argue, justify, or chase? They don't raise their voice. They don't chase clarity. They don't fight to be seen. They simply pull back, and the air changes. The temperature in the room drops. People start shifting in their seats. Silence grows teeth. That isn't passivity. That's calculated control. Machiavelli understood this before modern psychology ever caught up. Withdrawal, when chosen. Not sulking, not pouting, but chosen, isn't retreat. It is dominance expressed through absence. Think about what happens when you stop rushing in to explain yourself. Absence becomes a mirror. People stop seeing you and start seeing their dependence on you. They meet their entitlement head on. They feel the tremor of not being able to summon you on demand. Most people don't fear losing love as much as they fear losing leverage. They don't miss you. They miss their grip on you. If you've been the one who always shows up, answers quickly, and keeps the peace even when it costs you, understand this. That isn't being loved. That's being useful. And usefulness, without boundaries, turns you into a tool. Predictability is not virtue. It's vulnerability. A man who is always available is never feared. And a man who isn't feared is easily controlled. You think your kindness builds connection, but kindness without limits breeds contempt. You turn into background noise. You become the emotional concierge, always on call, always polite, always losing a little more of yourself to keep everyone else comfortable. Every yes you say when silence would have been wiser sells off a piece of your dignity for the illusion of being needed. Machiavelli would call that weakness dressed up as virtue. Never trade your value for approval. Never let your worth be measured by how quickly you respond, or how nicely you fold yourself into someone else's expectations. When you're constantly available, you burn through leverage. You erase scarcity, and scarcity of time, of presence, of access is the backbone of influence. That's why the most grounded, magnetic people you know aren't everywhere. They're selective, they're measured. Their voice carries weight because they don't spend it carelessly. So the next time you feel the itch to explain, to justify, to reassure people who never once reassured you, don't perform. Don't protest. Disappear strategically. Not as revenge, not as a tantrum, but as refinement. Step back to reintroduce yourself as someone who no longer serves other people's moods, but guards his own kingdom. Let your silence become a signal. Let your absence recalibrate the room. Withdrawal is not cowardice, it's evolution. It's the moment you stop reacting and start positioning. It's the point where you become unreadable, unpredictable, and, yes, untouchable. Notice what happens then. People pay attention. When you vanish without a monologue, they don't ask what happened to you. They wonder what new power you've discovered that made you stop explaining. If you feel that truth rising in your chest, name it. Claim it. Tell yourself, I step back to reclaim my power. And if you choose to keep walking this path of silent strategy, understand the motive. Not to hide, but to rule your inner state. Not to chase respect, but to command it, by choosing when to speak and when to vanish. Here's a hard truth most men were never taught. Being useful is not the same as being powerful. Being predictable is not loyalty. It's self-betrayal with good manners. Being always available is the slow death of respect. From childhood, many of us were trained to be agreeable. Say yes. Don't rock the boat. Answer fast. Apologize first. Sacrifice your time to soothe everyone else. Machiavelli would smirk at that conditioning. He didn't believe in moral submission. He believed in power management. If you are endlessly reachable and endlessly explaining yourself, you've already abdicated the throne of your life, because the person who cheapens himself with constant availability will never be treated as rare. You might tell yourself that quick replies signal commitment. You might believe that showing up on command strengthens the relationship. What it actually builds is expectation, and expectation suffocates appreciation. The more they expect you, the less they value you. Machiavelli saw through this game. The one who tries to be loved by everyone becomes a servant to the ungrateful. People do not respect the perpetual yes. They exploit it. Watch the cycle. They send a message. You respond instantly. They push a complaint. You provide an explanation. They stir anxiety. You play peacemaker. Before you realize it, you're their crisis manager, their validation source, their emotional buffer. But you weren't born to be a sponge for other people's discomfort. You were born to build a life governed by your own values, not their volatility. Machiavelli wouldn't console you in that pattern. He'd wake you. When they expect, surprise them with silence. When they depend, detach. When they assume you are theirs, remind them you belong to no one. If you cannot disrupt expectations, you will be ruled by them. You believe that explaining yourself signals nobility. But to a manipulator, your explanations are confessions. Your transparency becomes ammunition. Your unfiltered kindness becomes a leash. So, what now? Break the rhythm. Interrupt the dance. Withdraw without a warning label. Let them feel the vacuum they pretended didn't exist. Let their comfort with your constant presence collapse under the weight of your boundaries. This is how control returns to you, by replacing predictability with tactical silence, by answering only when it serves your purpose, by remembering that access to your attention, your time, and your inner world is not a right. It is a reward. If the answer to, does this person deserve access, isn't a clear, powerful yes, then it's a strategic no. This is not cruelty. It's clarity. This is not ego. It's sovereignty. From this moment on, you are not their solution. You are not their convenience. You are a man in command. Every war is fought with limited resources. Generals don't waste arrows on shadows, and you shouldn't waste energy on meaningless conflicts. Every reply, every explanation, every defensive reaction costs you something. And most men, most good men, don't even realize they're being robbed. They wake up exhausted not because of hard work, but because of exposure. Exposure to people who drain them. Exposure to endless demands. Exposure to the subtle theft of energy disguised as responsibility. Machiavelli would not call this burnout. He'd call it strategic failure. Because if you spend your strength on petty squabbles, if you use your fire to light the path for everyone else, then when the real battle arrives, you have nothing left to give. Your energy is not infinite, it is currency, and who you give it to is a reflection of who you obey. Carl Jung once said that every thought and every emotion draws from a limited reservoir. Machiavelli would sharpen this lesson. Do not simply protect your energy, weaponize it. Treat it like gold. Spend it where it multiplies, not where it vanishes. Most men think showing up to every debate, responding to every cry for attention, proves loyalty or kindness. But the truth? Every reaction gives others a map of your weakness. They don't need to overpower you. They only need to bait you into wasting yourself. That's how manipulators win. They profile you. They watch your patterns. They know your triggers. And when they can predict you, they can control you. That's why Machiavelli would order you to stop feeding fools. Withdraw from their noise. Let them collapse under the silence you refuse to break. Because when you stop giving them your time, your validation, your attention, you become dangerous. And dangerous men are never predictable. They are never easy to provoke. They are unreadable and therefore untouchable. You were not made to be a fountain that anyone can drink from. You were built to be a fortress, guarding your fire. Because when your presence is rare, it becomes power. So, here's the command. Stop defending yourself in every skirmish. Stop explaining yourself to people who don't deserve the truth. From this day forward, every time you're asked for a reaction, ask yourself, do they want resolution, or do they just want control? If the answer isn't clear, default to silence. Not because you're weak, but because you're finished being played. This is the coldest clarity of all. Silence is not retreat. It is not surrender, and it is certainly not weakness. Silence is strategy. Silence is a trap. Silence is the camouflage of the calculating man. In a world of shouting, the one who withholds becomes the threat. Think of what happens when you resist the bait. They insult you, you say nothing. They push your buttons. You don't move. Suddenly, they reveal themselves. They speak more. They scramble. They unravel under their own weight. Because manipulators cannot control silence. They cannot use it. They cannot predict it, and that terrifies them. Carl Jung believed silence reconnects you to yourself. Machiavelli would push further. Silence disconnects your enemies from their power. It turns their aggression inward. It makes them self-destruct. This is psychological siege warfare. Let them waste their arrows. Let them burn their energy. You conserve yours. You sharpen yours. Remember this rule. The one who reacts loses the frame. The one who speaks first exposes their hand. But the one who holds silence owns the moment. Let them sweat in the gaps you leave. Let their words echo without cover. In silence, you reveal everything while showing nothing. That's why you must stop apologizing for your solitude. Stop justifying your boundaries. Stop explaining your peace. Every time you say, "I'm sorry I didn't reply," or "I was overwhelmed," you reinforce the illusion that you owe explanations. You don't. You never did. Your silence is not an offense. It is a declaration. Your detachment is not arrogance. It is sovereignty. Every man who rises must accept this truth. Being loved is optional, but being respected is essential. Respect begins where explanations end. So when someone says you've changed, smile, because they're right. You've stopped being predictable. You've stopped being available. You've stopped being owned by their expectations. You don't exist to be universally liked. You exist to be clear. Clear about who you are. Clear about what you tolerate. Clear about who earns access to you. This is sovereignty. This is the path Machiavelli would set before you. There is a pain few men dare to speak of. It is not the sting of betrayal, or the collapse of a dream, or even the loss of someone you love. It is the hollow ache that follows withdrawal, the silence that echoes after you stop showing up for everyone else. At first it feels like freedom, then it feels like doubt, and finally, it feels like loneliness. The stillness where other people's expectations used to live can be unbearable. You start asking yourself, did I go too far? Was I too cold? Did I burn bridges I might still need? But if Machiavelli stood beside you in that moment, he wouldn't offer comfort. He would offer clarity. He would tell you that power is not born in applause. It is forged in isolation. And isolation, far from being a punishment, is purification. This isn't the pain of losing people. It's the pain of losing the version of yourself who depended on their approval, who lived for validation, who clung to usefulness like it was love. You are not suffering from solitude. You are detoxing from servitude. Every yes you gave to avoid conflict was a no to yourself. Every time you explained your goodness to people who never explained their cruelty, You stepped further from your strength. Machiavelli would call this what it is: a strategic death. The obedient version of you must die so the sovereign one can be born. That ache in your chest isn't weakness. It's the burning away of dependency. It's the sound of chains falling off. Carl Jung called this individuation the painful but necessary process of shedding your false identities until you become whole. Machiavelli would frame it in harsher terms. It is the transfer of power. Power taken from those who feasted on your need to be seen, and restored back to you. Yes, it will feel unnatural. Yes, it will feel uncomfortable. But so does every great transformation. Think of the lion. He is not born in a crowd. He is born in solitude. He doesn't roar for applause. He roars because he remembers his own voice. The loneliness you feel now is not emptiness. It is the womb of sovereignty. Don't run from the pain. Stand in it. Let it cut you open. Let it cleanse you. Let it crown you. You didn't lose them. You lost the illusion of them. And in that loss, you finally found yourself. If you feel this shift rising inside you, carve it into your identity. My solitude is my sanctuary. Here is the difference Machiavelli wants you to understand. There is a gulf between being seen and being remembered, between being around and being respected, between being liked and being valued. Most men confuse attention with influence. They think noise is power, but Machiavelli knew better. Scarcity is what creates gravity. He wrote, "The prince who is always seen becomes ordinary, but the one who controls when and how he appears becomes unforgettable." Your problem wasn't that you were invisible. It was that you were too visible, too accessible, too easy to reach. You showed up before they even missed you. You explained before they even asked. And by doing so, you trained them to treat you like a background character in your own life. Scarcity creates value. Distance creates weight. You don't need to vanish completely. You need to be strategic. Speak less, so your words land heavier. Appear less so your presence feels larger. Make your time, your energy, and your attention into privileges, not entitlements. Think of gold. Its worth isn't in how bright it shines, but in how rare it is, how protected it is, how hard it is to obtain. Why should your presence be worth less? Why should your attention be handed out like free samples? The man who is always seen is soon forgotten, but the man who chooses when to enter, when to speak, and when to withdraw becomes unforgettable. This is not arrogance. This is sovereignty. This is what kings understand. Your attention is currency. Your presence is leverage. Your absence is a reminder. So from now on, every interaction should begin with a question. Is this person earning my presence? Or are they just expecting it by default? If they haven't earned it, they don't get it. If they assume you'll show up, prove them wrong. Because when people no longer know where you stand, that's when they start to feel your power. And this is not theory. It is survival. Machiavelli never promised peace. He promised clarity. He never preached comfort. He preached control. He never valued kindness without strength. He valued power, sometimes disguised as kindness, sometimes withdrawn as silence, but always sharpened with calculation. Here is the truth that ties it all together. The man who does not command himself will always be commanded by others. And command begins with one act: withdrawal. Withdrawal from weakness. Withdrawal from over-explaining. Withdrawal from emotional servitude. Withdrawal from being the man who shows up for everyone except himself. In that distance, you stop being predictable. You stop being controlled. You become unreadable, untouchable, ungovernable. That is where real power begins. When you finally stop performing for the world, something extraordinary happens. You no longer chase clarity in others. You start building certainty inside yourself. You stop apologizing for your evolution. You stop explaining your boundaries. You stop defending your peace to people who only valued your obedience. And in that moment, something shifts. You stop being a man who is managed by others and become a man who manages himself. Machiavelli would tell you this power is never granted. It is taken. And it is sustained not by noise, not by force, but by calculation. From now on, you are not here to be emotionally available to everyone. You are not here to be endlessly understood. You are not here to be easy to reach. You are here to govern yourself like a kingdom, choosing who enters, who stays, and who never gets a key again. This is the Machiavellian man. He does not explain. He does not justify. He does not beg to be seen. He speaks only when it serves him. He vanishes when it strengthens him. He returns only when the terrain favors his move. That is the art of sovereignty. Your new life does not begin with applause. It begins in silence. And it ends in dominance, not dominance over others, but mastery over the one thing that has always been stolen from you, your self-command. Let others gossip. Let them speculate. Let them miss you. But you withdraw. You observe. And you return only when it serves your purpose. Because as Machiavelli knew, the game does not belong to the honest. It belongs to the prepared. And now, you are prepared. This transformation is not about cruelty. It is about clarity. It is about conserving what matters most. Your energy, your attention, your presence. Think of every conversation you enter, every argument you respond to, every emotional fire you put out for someone else. Each one costs you something, and most men pay these costs without even realizing it. They wake up exhausted, not because of hard labor, but because of exposure to draining people and useless conflicts. Machiavelli would call this not burnout, but strategic failure. Because if you waste your energy on trivial battles, you will have nothing left when the real war comes. And there will always be a real war. Make no mistake, your energy is currency. And who you give it to is a reflection of who you serve. Do you serve your own sovereignty, or do you serve the endless appetites of others? Carl Jung warned that every thought and emotion draws from a limited reservoir. Machiavelli sharpened that warning. Energy is not just to be preserved, it is to be weaponized. It should be deployed with precision, like a king uses gold. Not to be generous, but to gain advantage. Every reaction you give is data. Every explanation is a confession. Every predictable response makes you easy to map, easy to manipulate. And once people can predict you, they can control you. That is why silence is so powerful. It makes you unreadable. It turns you into an anomaly. And anomalies cannot be managed. They cannot be categorized. They cannot be controlled. When you stop explaining yourself, people panic. They scramble to interpret your silence. They dig their own graves trying to decode what you're thinking, and in that panic, they expose themselves. They reveal their insecurities. They confess what they would have hidden if you had given them the distraction of your words. Machiavelli knew this better than anyone. The greatest exposure does not come from confrontation. It comes from withdrawal. And here is the paradox. The very people who once praised your goodness, your availability, your patience, these same people will accuse you of cruelty the moment you step back. They will call your boundaries arrogance. They will call your silence betrayal. They will call your growth selfish. But don't respond. Don't react. Let them speak. Because in that moment, you are watching their illusion collapse. Carl Jung called it the breakdown of the persona, the mask people wear to be accepted. Machiavelli would put it more ruthlessly: when the mask falls, the game begins. And now, you are no longer who they want you to be. You are who you choose to be. Not polite, not predictable, but powerful. This is why silence terrifies manipulators. It doesn't confuse the strong. It terrifies those who built their comfort on your compliance. They admired your kindness only because it was compliance. They respected your patience only because it meant they could control you. But once you go silent, they no longer see you. They see themselves. And most people cannot stand the reflection. So here is your command. Do not explain. Do not chase. Do not clarify. Let the silence speak. Let it shake their confidence. Let it reveal their desperation. In a world addicted to noise, silence is rebellion. In a game of power, silence is dominance. When you stop reacting, you don't just avoid chaos. You control it. You flip the board. You remove yourself from the script they wrote for you. Suddenly they don't know what you're thinking. They don't know how to provoke you. They don't even know if you're still playing the game. And that is the deepest power of all: unpredictability. Because what they cannot read, they cannot control. Power does not always roar. Sometimes it whispers in silence. Machiavelli once wrote that it is not always necessary to strike. Sometimes the most terrifying strike is not moving at all. Because when you refuse to react, you create a vacuum. And in that vacuum, people reveal themselves. They talk more. They panic more. They expose more. They burn out while you sharpen. That is psychological siege warfare. Most people have been trained since childhood to respond instantly. Every insult, every provocation, every message, reply fast, defend yourself, prove your worth. But here's the truth. The one who reacts first loses. The one who holds silence owns the frame. Because manipulators thrive on reaction. They live off your need to explain, to clarify, to be seen as good. But when you resist that instinct, they collapse under their own projections. They can't control silence. They can't predict it. And that terrifies them. You don't need to shout. You don't need to argue. You don't need to win debates. Silence is the death of their narrative. It unravels their manipulation without you lifting a finger. Carl Jung believed silence connects you to your true self. Machiavelli would add, silence disconnects your enemies from theirs. It forces their aggression inward. They begin to consume themselves in the void you leave behind. That isn't weakness. It's strategy. It's the art of letting them destroy themselves while you conserve. This is why you must stop justifying your silence. Stop apologizing for your boundaries. Stop explaining your need for solitude. Every time you explain, you reinforce the illusion that you owe others access to your life. But you don't. You never did. Your silence is not rudeness, it is declaration. Your boundaries are not cruelty. They are the architecture of self-respect. And your detachment is not arrogance, it is recalibration. The moment you stop explaining, you reclaim authority over your own story. Because when people grow used to your explanations, they stop respecting your instincts. They start expecting justification for every move. And when you don't explain, they panic. But that panic is not your burden to soothe. It is their discomfort to face. Machiavelli knew a ruler must choose. To be loved or to be respected. Only one ensures order. Too many men choose love, and in doing so they become servants to perception. They live for applause while bleeding themselves dry. But clarity is a sword, and silence is its sheath. You wield both the moment you stop defending your peace. So when someone says, "You've changed," don't argue. Smile. Because they are right. You are no longer predictable. You are no longer accessible. You are no longer theirs to summon. You are evolving, and evolution requires no permission slip. Let them misinterpret. Let them invent stories. Let them spin in confusion. That is not your problem. That is their loss. Every man who rises into sovereignty must face one final trial. The guilt of no longer being available. The guilt of no longer being useful. The guilt of no longer serving everyone else's comfort. And this guilt will feel like loneliness, like betrayal, like abandonment. But it is none of those things. It is purification. It is the death of the obedient self and the birth of the sovereign one. Let it hurt. Let it burn. Let the old self scream as it dies. Because in that fire, something new is born. A man who doesn't beg for permission. A man who doesn't explain. A man who doesn't chase. A man who disappears and returns as his own force of nature. This is individuation, as Jung would call it. But in Machiavelli's language, it is the transfer of power. Power not given to you but taken back from those who fed on your need to be liked. It will feel unnatural. It will feel brutal. But every transformation does. The lion doesn't emerge from applause. He emerges from solitude. So don't fear the silence. Don't fear the solitude. Don't fear the loss of approval. That is where sovereignty is born. You didn't lose them. You lost the illusion of them. And in doing so, you found yourself. Remember this. What is always available becomes invisible. What is always predictable becomes expendable. But what is scarce, strategic, and unreadable, that is what commands. Scarcity creates value. Distance creates gravity. Silence creates fear. From this moment on, treat your attention like currency. Treat your presence like leverage. Treat your absence like a reminder. Ask yourself in every interaction, does this person earn my presence, or do they assume it by default? If the answer is assumption, withdraw. If the answer is entitlement, disappear. This is not arrogance. This is sovereignty. This is the discipline of kings. You are no longer here for convenience. You are here for consequence. And understand this final law. A man who does not command himself will be commanded by others. Command begins with withdrawal. Withdraw from weakness. Withdraw from the need to explain. Withdraw from the addiction to being needed. In that distance, you become unreadable. In that unreadability, you become untouchable. And in that untouchability, you discover real power. From here on out, let others chatter. Let them speculate. Let them miss you. You calculate. You conserve. You rise. Because as Machiavelli knew, the game doesn't belong to the honest. It belongs to the prepared. And now you are prepared.